At 18, she became the Apache warrior's bride, and that night she learned the depth of his world. She had always felt a restless curiosity about the world beyond her small town. At 18, life seemed ordinary to everyone around her, but she carried a quiet longing inside, a desire to see life in its rawest and most authentic form. The town she lived in was peaceful but limited. Fields stretched in neat rows. A few houses dotted the landscape, and neighbors knew each other so well that secrets rarely survived more than a day. For most people, this was comfort. For her, it was stifling. She wanted adventure, she wanted meaning, and most of all, she wanted to understand people whose lives were entirely different from hers. From a young age, she had been fascinated by stories of the Apache people. Her grandmother had told her about them, recounting tales of courage, skill, and a life deeply connected to nature. These stories made her feel both awe and curiosity. She had never met an Apache in person, but she imagined their villages surrounded by mountains and rivers, their people strong, proud, and wise. Every evening, she would sit by her window and dream about what it would be like to witness that world herself. She longed to walk in the forest, to hear the drums of their ceremonies, to see their children laughing in ways so different from hers. Her own family did not fully understand her fascination. They were kind and protective, but they worried about things she could not yet see. To them, adventure was something dangerous, something that could lead to heartbreak. They wanted her to stay in the comfort of their home, to finish her studies, and perhaps marry someone from their town. But she knew that if she stayed confined in the routine life everyone expected of her, she would regret it forever. So she kept her thoughts private, hidden behind polite smiles and quiet obedience, even as her mind wandered to the world beyond the hills. The first time she saw him, she did not realize immediately who he was. He came to town quietly, with a calm presence that seemed to demand attention without trying. People spoke in hushed tones about the Apache warrior who had arrived to meet with local leaders. He was strong, tall, and carried an air of dignity that made people instinctively respect him. There was something about the way he moved, deliberate yet effortless, that captured her attention instantly. She found herself staring more than she intended, heart fluttering with a mix of fear and excitement. She did not know him, yet she felt drawn to him in a way she had never felt toward anyone before. Their first conversation was brief, polite, and tinged with curiosity. He asked her name, and she told him, feeling shy under his steady gaze. He spoke softly, but every word carried weight, as if he measured its importance before it left his mouth. He did not try to impress her with grand gestures or flowery compliments. Instead, he spoke of simple things, of the land, of seasons, of the life he led among his people. And though she only understood a small part of it, she felt an unfamiliar excitement stirring within her. Here was a man whose life was unlike anything she had ever known, yet somehow she wanted to know more. She wanted to step closer to that world, to see it not through stories, but with her own eyes. Over the following weeks, their encounters grew more frequent. He would appear in the town square or at gatherings, always noticing her presence without intruding. Sometimes he would ask questions about her life, and though the topic seemed simple, his genuine interest made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced. She began to notice small things about him: the careful way he listened, the respect in his gestures, and the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him. There was mystery in his eyes, a depth that made her wonder what stories lay behind them. Each meeting left her with questions and a flutter of anticipation she could neither control nor explain. Her friends noticed her change before her family did. She smiled more often, walked with a lighter step, and carried herself differently. When they asked about it, she would only laugh and shrug, not ready to share what was stirring in her heart. But inside, a storm of excitement and fear brewed. She knew that she was on the edge of something significant, though she did not yet understand its magnitude. Every story she had heard about the Apache people now seemed alive, tangible, and thrilling, and every time she caught a glimpse of the warrior in the distance, her heart leapt with anticipation, wondering what the next encounter would bring. One day he approached her with a question that took her by surprise. Would she accompany him to the edge of his land, Just to see it, he asked, and nothing more? Her heart raced. To go with him was dangerous, yes, but also irresistible. She remembered all the dreams she had harbored, all the stories she had imagined, and felt that this was her chance to touch them. After a long moment of hesitation, she nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She knew that this small decision would change her life in ways she could not yet comprehend. The journey to the outskirts of his village was unlike anything she had imagined. The landscape shifted from neat fields to wild rolling hills dotted with ancient trees. Rivers cut through the valleys, their waters sparkling under the sun, and the wind carried unfamiliar scents of earth and vegetation. She noticed the way he moved confidently across the land, how he seemed to understand its every curve and stone. She stumbled sometimes, but he guided her gently, his hand firm yet kind. With every step she felt herself drawn deeper into his world, a world that was beautiful, dangerous, and full of life. When they arrived at his village, she was taken aback by the sense of community she witnessed. People greeted him with respect, their faces lighting up at his presence. Children ran freely, playing games she did not recognize, while elders watched with quiet authority. She realized that this was a life bound not by walls or rules, but by connection. Connection to the land, to family, and to each other. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and deeply humbling. She could see that this world demanded courage and respect in equal measure, and she felt both daunted and intrigued. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, she sat quietly with him by the river. He spoke of his people, of their traditions and values, and of the responsibilities he bore as a warrior. Though she could not fully understand every detail, she felt the weight of his words. There was honor in the life he led, and with it came sacrifice and vigilance. She felt small in comparison, yet strangely inspired. For the first time, she realized that adventure was not just about excitement or curiosity. It was about understanding, respect, and courage. As night fell, she returned to her family's home with a heart full of questions and a mind buzzing with wonder. She could not stop thinking about the warrior, about the land, and about the life that waited for her on the other side of fear. Her family noticed her distant gaze, her quiet contemplation, but she could not explain what she had felt. She only knew that something inside her had changed. The world she had always known suddenly seemed smaller, and the world she had longed for seemed just within reach. That night, she dreamed of the hills, the rivers, and the faces of people whose lives were both different from and deeply connected to her own. She dreamed of courage, of choice, and of a journey that was only just beginning. The days after her visit to the Apache village passed slowly, each moment stretched with anticipation. She could not stop thinking about him, the warrior who had walked beside her, guided her, and shared glimpses of a life so different from her own. Her heart was a mixture of excitement and fear. She had never felt so drawn to anyone before. The thought of seeing him again made her pulse quicken, yet the reality of what his world demanded made her hesitate. Could she truly belong in a place so unlike her own? Could she navigate a life bound by rules she had yet to understand? These questions filled her mind as she went about her daily routine, yet she found no answers. Only a deep, persistent longing remained. When he appeared in the town again, it was as if the air itself shifted. People spoke in whispers, but she barely noticed them. All her attention was on him, on the way he moved with calm confidence, his eyes scanning the surroundings, yet always finding her. He approached her with a quiet smile that seemed to carry reassurance. He did not speak immediately, allowing the moment to stretch, letting her heart catch up to the reality of his presence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, and calm. He asked if she would meet him at the edge of the woods the following evening. She agreed without hesitation, feeling her stomach twist with nervous excitement. That night, sleep eluded her. She lay awake, thinking of the woods, the journey, and the man whose life had captivated her imagination. Her mind raced with possibilities. What would he say? What did he expect of her? And, most importantly, what did she expect of herself? She realized that part of her was terrified. Not of him, but of the unknown. Yet another part of her felt a thrill she could not describe. She was about to step further into his world, a world that was vast, mysterious, and unlike anything she had ever known. When the evening arrived, she wore a simple dress, careful not to draw attention to herself while still feeling graceful. As she walked toward the woods, her heart pounded, each step carrying her closer to the moment that would change her life. He was waiting, standing near a cluster of tall trees that swayed gently in the breeze. The sun cast golden light over the clearing, and in that quiet moment she felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. He greeted her with a slight nod, and together they began to walk along a narrow path that led deeper into the forest. The journey was silent for a time, filled only with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. Yet in that silence she felt a connection growing between them. She observed the careful way he navigated the uneven terrain, his movements both strong and precise. She noticed how his eyes seemed to take in every detail of the land, the curve of the hills, the shape of the trees, the signs of animals moving unseen. She realized that his world was not just physical. It was a life of awareness, responsibility, and deep connection to the earth. Her respect for him grew with each step. After some time they reached a clearing where the view of the surrounding landscape was breathtaking. Rolling hills stretched into the distance, dotted with rivers that glimmered under the fading light of the sun. He turned to her then, his expression serious but not harsh. He spoke of the life he led, of the traditions that had been passed down for generations, and of the responsibilities that came with being a warrior. His words were measured, each carrying weight and meaning. She listened intently, realizing that this was more than a story. This was a lesson in courage, respect, and understanding. Then came the question that would change everything. He asked her if she would consider becoming his bride. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Her heart raced. She had imagined many possibilities, dreamed of adventures and experiences beyond her small town. But this was more than she had expected. It was real, immediate, and irreversible. She felt a surge of fear, thinking of the responsibilities, the challenges, and the unknowns. Yet at the same time there was a deep, undeniable pull within her, a sense that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Her family's reaction was swift and complicated. When she shared his proposal, her parents were stunned. They could not fully comprehend the decision she faced. Her mother worried about the dangers, about her daughter being so far from home and immersed in a world so different from their own. Her father struggled with pride and fear, knowing that while the warrior was honorable and strong, the path she was about to take would test her in ways they could not predict. Family friends whispered cautionary tales, and neighbors offered advice, sometimes conflicting and confusing. She listened to all of it, taking each word into consideration, yet her heart guided her toward a decision that her mind struggled to rationalize. The days that followed were filled with preparation and reflection. She began learning about the customs she would encounter, trying to understand the ways of the Apache people. She spoke with elders who had known the warrior since he was a boy, learning about the responsibilities of a bride and the expectations she would face. She studied the language, practiced the rituals, and tried to imagine what life would be like when she was fully immersed in his world. Each lesson brought both excitement and anxiety. She realized that to enter this life she would need courage, humility, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. The morning of her departure, she packed her belongings carefully, choosing items that were practical and meaningful. She said goodbye to her family, feeling a mixture of sadness, fear, and anticipation. Her mother pressed a small charm into her hand, a token of protection and love, while her father's gaze held unspoken warnings and hopes. She promised them she would be careful, though she knew that life on the other side of the hills would not be simple. With a final glance at the town she had always known, she turned toward the warrior, ready to step fully into the life that awaited her. The journey to his village was long and challenging, yet she felt a strange exhilaration with each step. The landscape changed as they moved deeper into the land, becoming wilder, untamed, and filled with unfamiliar beauty. She observed how he interacted with the environment, how he respected the rivers, the trees, and the animals that crossed their path. She realized that his life was not just about survival, but about harmony and understanding. It was a world that demanded attention, care, and courage, and she felt both humbled and inspired. Upon arriving, she was greeted by members of his community, who observed her with curiosity and respect. Children peeked from behind trees, elders nodded in acknowledgement, and the warrior's family welcomed her with quiet dignity. She felt a mixture of relief and nervousness, realizing that she was not just entering a village but a family, a culture, and a life that would require her full presence and commitment. Her thoughts raced as she took in the sights, sounds, and smells of the place. Everything was alive, vibrant, and deeply rooted in tradition. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, she sat beside him near a small fire. The air was cool, and the sounds of the village drifted softly around them. He spoke of what it meant to be his bride, not just in terms of ceremony, but in terms of life, responsibility, and understanding. He spoke of loyalty, respect, and love that went beyond words, of a bond that was built through trust, courage, and shared experiences. She listened with her heart open, realizing that this decision was more than marriage. It was a promise to embrace a new world, to step into life with eyes wide open, and to honor the path that lay ahead. As the night grew darker, she understood the depth of the journey she was about to undertake. She felt fear, yes, but also a profound sense of purpose. She realized that love was not just about affection, but about commitment, respect, and courage. She felt a connection to him and his world that went beyond the surface, a bond forged in shared experience, understanding, and anticipation. In that quiet moment, she made a decision, not just to accept his proposal, but to embrace the life that awaited her with an open heart and a brave spirit. The next morning, she awoke with a sense of clarity and determination. She was no longer merely a visitor in his world. She was preparing to become part of it, to learn its rhythms, and to honor its traditions. She felt a deep respect for the life he led, for the courage required to walk his path, and for the trust he had placed in her. With each passing day, she would learn, adapt, and grow. The journey would not be easy, but she felt ready to meet it head-on, knowing that the life she was about to live would be full of lessons, beauty, and the kind of understanding she had always longed for. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly, wrapped in soft sunlight and gentle mountain air. She woke before the others, her heart already awake, beating with nervous excitement. The sky outside her shelter glowed pale gold, and the world felt calm, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Today was not just a celebration. It was the beginning of a new life, one she had chosen with courage, hope, and trust. Women from the village came to help her prepare. They smiled kindly, speaking softly, their voices warm and reassuring. Though their words were unfamiliar, their gestures said everything. They braided her hair with care, tying small woven threads into it, each one carrying meaning, protection, strength, and unity. They dressed her in simple yet beautiful clothing, handmade and rich with color. When she looked at herself, she barely recognized the girl staring back. She was no longer the uncertain young woman from a small town. She was stepping into something larger than herself. Outside, the village was alive with quiet movement. Fires were lit for cooking, elders gathered in small circles, and children ran between homes, laughing softly as if they understood that today was special. The rhythm of drums echoed faintly in the distance, steady and calming, like a heartbeat. She stood still for a moment, listening, letting the sounds wash over her. Fear fluttered in her chest, but beneath it was something stronger, peace. He waited near the center of the village, dressed in traditional clothing that reflected his role and heritage. His posture was straight, his expression calm, but his eyes softened when he saw her approach. In that moment, she realized something important. He was not just strong, he was steady. Not just brave, but gentle. And somehow knowing this made her feel safe. The ceremony began as the sun rose higher into the sky. Elders spoke words of wisdom, reminding them both of the importance of respect, loyalty, and understanding. She did not understand every word, but she understood the meaning. This was not about one person changing for the other. This was about two people learning to walk together, even when the path was uncertain. When they stood facing each other, she felt the weight of the moment. Her hands trembled slightly, but his remained steady as he reached for hers. The warmth of his touch calmed her, grounding her in the present. Around them, the village stood in quiet support, not watching as strangers, but as family. She had never felt such unity before. Not in her town, not even in her own home. This was different. This was belonging. As the ceremony ended, soft cheers and smiles filled the air. Food was shared, stories were exchanged, and laughter rose like music. Children danced freely, elders smiled with knowing eyes, and she found herself laughing too, truly laughing, for the first time since arriving. For a few hours, fear vanished, doubt disappeared. All that remained was joy, light, and a growing sense of peace. Yet beneath the celebration, her heart remained aware that something deeper was coming. Tonight, she would fully step into his world, not just as a visitor or guest, but as his wife. She did not know what that truly meant yet. She only knew that she wanted to learn. As evening approached, the village slowly grew quieter. Fires burned lower, voices softened, and families returned to their homes. The sky shifted into shades of orange, purple, and deep blue. Stars began to appear, one by one, lighting the heavens above. The air felt cooler now, and the world felt wide and endless. He walked beside her toward their new home, a small, simple shelter built with care and intention. It was not large, but it was warm, strong, and welcoming. The door was decorated with woven symbols of protection and unity. When she stepped inside, she paused. This place, humble as it was, would now be hers, too. A space of beginnings, a space of growth. They sat quietly at first, letting the stillness speak. The fire crackled softly between them, casting gentle light across the walls. Shadows danced in warm patterns, and outside, the night wind whispered through the trees. She felt her thoughts rushing. Memories of her family, her old home, her past life, all mixing with questions about her future. He spoke gently, breaking the silence. "This place is not just land," he said slowly. "It is memory. It holds the voices of those who came before us, their struggles, their lessons, their strength." She listened carefully, sensing that he was about to share something deeper. "My people believe that every person walks two paths," he continued. "One path is what the world sees. The other is what lives inside. Both must stay balanced." She nodded, feeling the truth in his words, even before fully understanding them. He then spoke of his childhood, of learning to hunt, to track, to protect, and to listen, not just to people, but to nature itself. He described how elders taught him patience before strength, humility before pride, and responsibility before reward. He spoke of long nights spent watching the stars, learning stories written in the sky, of quiet mornings beside rivers, understanding that survival depended on respect, not control. She realized then that his world was not built on power. It was built on connection. She had imagined warriors as fierce and unbreakable, but sitting before her was someone thoughtful, reflective, and deeply grounded. His strength came not from force, but from understanding. This surprised her and humbled her. "I was raised to believe that courage means facing danger," she said softly. "But listening to you, it sounds like courage also means responsibility." He smiled slightly. "Yes, and patience, and kindness. These things are harder than strength." She absorbed his words, feeling them settle deep within her. She thought of her old life, her small town, her routines, her dreams of escape, and realized how little she had understood about the world. She had believed adventure meant excitement, but now she saw that true adventure meant growth. He then told her about his role as a warrior, not just defending his people but protecting their values. He spoke of duty, of sacrifice, of choosing peace whenever possible and strength only when necessary. He spoke of how leadership meant listening first, acting second. He shared stories of mistakes he had made, lessons he had learned, and moments when fear had challenged him. He did not hide his struggles. Instead, he honored them. This honesty surprised her even more than his strength. She realized he did not see her as someone weak or fragile. He saw her as someone capable of understanding, someone worthy of truth. And that realization changed everything. For the first time since leaving home, she did not feel like she was pretending. She did not feel like she was playing a role or trying to fit in. She felt real, seen, accepted, not for who she was trying to become, but for who she already was. She shared her fears with him, her fear of failing, of misunderstanding traditions, of disappointing his people, of losing herself. Her voice shook as she spoke, but she did not hide. She did not hold back. He listened without interruption. When she finished, he spoke softly. "You do not need to become someone else. You only need to become more of who you already are. My world does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to learn." Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. She had not realized how heavy her fear had been until it lifted. They sat together in silence again, but now it felt different. Not empty, but full. Full of understanding, full of trust, full of possibility. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. She stepped out briefly and looked up, stunned by their brightness. She had never seen so many before. The sky in her town had always been washed out by lights, but here, the universe felt close enough to touch. She felt small, not in a helpless way, but in a beautiful way. A way that reminded her she was part of something greater than herself. Joined her, standing beside her, gazing upward. "My people say the stars remind us that we are never alone," he said, "even when the world feels heavy." She smiled at that. "I think I understand now." She realized something important in that moment. This night was not about fear. It was about learning, about listening, about seeing the world through another person's eyes and letting them see through hers. Inside, they returned to the warmth of the fire. She noticed how peaceful she felt, how calm her breathing was, how steady her thoughts had become. The nervous girl from the morning was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, not because she had changed overnight, but because she had chosen to trust. He spoke again, but this time about the future, about seasons, journeys, building the life together, learning from each other, growing side by side. He spoke not with promises, but with intention, not with dreams alone, but with purpose. She realized then that love was not something that happened suddenly. It was something built, slowly, honestly, patiently. It was not just about feeling close. It was about choosing closeness, again and again. And in that quiet space, surrounded by firelight, shadows, and stars, she understood the true depth of his world. It was not the land. It was not the traditions. It was not even the strength. It was the values, respect, patience, responsibility, and connection. That night she did not just become a wife. She became a student, a listener, a learner. And for the first time in her life, she did not feel like she was running towards something unknown. She felt like she was finally arriving. The days that followed the wedding were a mixture of wonder, learning, and quiet challenges. Every morning she awoke to the sound of birds and the soft murmur of the village. The sun would stretch over the hills, casting long shadows and bathing the landscape in golden light. It was beautiful, yet it was also a life full of responsibility. She quickly realized that being part of this world meant more than admiration from afar. It meant participating fully, learning quickly, and respecting the rhythm of life that had existed here for generations. Her first tasks were simple but meaningful. She learned to help with preparing meals, grinding corn, gathering water from the river, and maintaining the small shelter they now shared. At first, every movement felt strange. Her hands were unskilled at the work, and the pace was faster than anything she had known at home. She dropped bowls, spilled water, and misjudged steps along the uneven ground. Sometimes frustration bubbled up inside her. She wanted to give up, to retreat to the life she had once known. But the warrior's calm presence reminded her to pause, to breathe, to observe, and to try again. His patience was quiet but firm, and it gave her the courage to continue, even when she faltered. The villagers watched her attempts with curiosity and kindness. Some of the older women came to her side, offering guidance in soft words and gentle gestures. They showed her how to knead dough so it would rise evenly, how to weave fibers into baskets, and how to tend small gardens that provided both food and medicine. They did not scold her for mistakes. Instead, they treated her learning as a shared experience, as if her willingness to try was already a contribution to the community. Slowly, she began to understand that respect in this village was earned not through words, but through action, effort, and humility. One of the most significant lessons she learned during these early days was how to live with patience. In her town, life had been measured by schedules, deadlines, and quick results. Here, the rhythm was different. Crops grew in their own time, water needed to be drawn carefully, and even simple meals required preparation and attention. She realized that rushing or demanding quick results did not help anyone. Instead, careful observation, slow practice, and respect for the process mattered more than speed. She began to notice the beauty in these small details, the gentle curve of a leaf, the shimmer of the river at dawn, the way sunlight touched the earth at different times of the day. Each moment taught her something new about patience, presence, and the value of simple work done with intention. Alongside these lessons, she grew closer to the warrior. He did not rush her or expect perfection. Instead, he walked beside her, guiding without controlling, correcting without harshness. She began to understand that his strength was not only in his ability to fight or defend, but in his ability to teach, to lead with care, and to respect those around him. He shared stories of his childhood, of mistakes he had made, and of moments when he had had to choose between pride and humility. Each story was a lesson, and she listened, learning not only about him, but about the principles that shaped his life. Despite these moments of learning and connection, there were challenges that tested her resolve. There were days when she felt overwhelmed by the demands of the community. Tasks that seemed simple at first grew tiring, and she sometimes struggled with homesickness. She missed the comfort of familiar surroundings, the ease of conversations in her own language, and the presence of her family. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered the courage that had brought her here, the curiosity that had guided her, and the trust she had placed in the warrior. These memories gave her strength, reminding her why she had chosen this life. One afternoon, she accompanied him on a journey to a nearby hillside where he taught her how to recognize signs in nature. Footprints of animals, patterns of wind through trees, and the changing colors of the earth that indicated water or shelter. At first, she struggled to see what he pointed out, missing details that seemed obvious to him. Yet he encouraged her gently, repeating instructions and guiding her attention without impatience. Gradually, she began to notice patterns and signs she had never seen before. Each discovery felt like unlocking a secret, a hidden layer of the world that only became visible through observation and care. She realized that understanding this world required more than curiosity. It required openness, humility, and persistence. Her evenings were spent listening to the elders share stories of the village's past. These tales were not just entertainment. They were lessons, carefully passed down to ensure that every member of the community understood their history, values, and responsibilities. She heard stories of courage, loss, leadership, and unity. At first, some of the words were difficult to grasp, and the concepts were unfamiliar, but she felt the meaning beneath them, sensing the wisdom woven into every narrative. Over time, these stories became a guide, teaching her how to navigate challenges, honor tradition, and build relationships with those around her. The children of the village were both curious and playful, often approaching her with questions and games. At first, she felt unsure how to engage with them, worried that she might offend or misunderstand their customs. But as she spent more time with them, she began to understand their ways. She laughed at their jokes, joined in their games, and listened to their stories. In doing so, she felt a sense of belonging slowly grow inside her. She was no longer an outsider looking in. She was becoming part of the community, one interaction, one shared laugh, and one careful step at a time. Through all of this, she discovered a new understanding of the warrior himself. She had once admired him from a distance, fascinated by his strength and confidence. But now, living alongside him, she saw the layers beneath that exterior. She saw his dedication to his people, the quiet sacrifices he made every day, and the depth of his understanding of the world around him. She realized that being a warrior was not just about skill or courage, it was about responsibility, humility, and empathy. She began to see him not as a distant figure of admiration, but as a partner, a teacher, and a guide. There were moments of quiet reflection when she would sit alone by the river or in a shaded grove, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. She thought of her family, her old life, and the choices that had led to this point. She acknowledged the fear she had felt, the uncertainty that had shadowed her steps, and the mistakes she had made. And yet she also recognized her growth, the skills she had learned, the patience she had gained, and the deep respect she now held for this world she was becoming part of. She felt proud of herself in ways she had never experienced before. With each passing day, her confidence grew. Tasks that had once seemed impossible became manageable, even natural. She learned to move through the village with awareness, to observe the land, to listen carefully to the people, and to act with intention. She began to notice small successes, the smile of an elder acknowledging her effort, the laughter of a child she had taught to weave, the quiet nod of the warrior when she completed a task well. Each small victory strengthened her, reminding her that belonging was not immediate, but built through effort, care, and respect. By the end of her first season in the village, she had changed in ways she could hardly describe. She was no longer the timid young woman who had arrived with only curiosity and courage. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more patient. She had learned to listen, to observe, and to act with intention. She had discovered the beauty in simplicity, the power in humility, and the value of trust. Most importantly, she had begun to understand the world of the warrior, not just its challenges, but its depth, its principles, and its meaning. Evenings were now times of comfort rather than anxiety. She and the warrior would sit together by the fire, sharing thoughts, reflecting on the day, and quietly learning from each other. She began to feel a connection not only to him, but to the entire community. She understood that belonging was not about erasing her past or forgetting who she had been. It was about weaving her experiences into the fabric of this life, learning from the people around her, and growing alongside them. And in those quiet, reflective moments, she realized something that would stay with her forever. Life in the village was not easy. It was filled with challenges, responsibilities, and lessons that demanded patience and humility. But it was also beautiful, rich, and full of meaning. It was a life where every action mattered, where every relationship required care, and where understanding the world meant understanding herself. She understood, finally, that this was what the warrior had tried to show her from the beginning. His world was not simply about strength or survival. It was about balance, respect, courage, and connection. And she felt honored, grateful, and ready to continue learning. Months passed, and with each passing day she felt herself becoming more a part of the village, more a part of the warrior's world, and more herself than she had ever been. The early uncertainty she had felt had softened into confidence. The small mistakes she once fretted over were now memories of lessons learned. She no longer feared failure because she understood that growth came from trying, learning, and listening. Life here demanded attention, effort, and humility. But it also gave her gifts she had never imagined: trust, friendship, respect, and belonging. She began her days earlier now, rising with the sun as it painted the hills in soft hues of gold and pink. The air smelled fresh and alive, carrying the scents of river water, wild grass, and earth warmed by the morning light. Each day brought new tasks: tending to gardens, helping with cooking, gathering firewood, and caring for the small children of the village. Every chore was a chance to contribute, to show care, and to learn. She moved with a quiet grace that had developed over months of practice, and villagers often paused to smile at her, seeing how far she had come. The warrior continued to guide her, though less than before. He trusted her now, as the community did. She had learned to anticipate what was needed, to notice small changes in the land, the animals, and the people around her. She had discovered that life here was a constant balance of observation and action, patience and courage. She took pride in her growing understanding, yet she also recognized that she had much more to learn. That realization did not intimidate her. Instead, it filled her with a quiet excitement. Life was vast, and each day offered new lessons. Evenings became a time of reflection and connection. She and the warrior would sit by the fire, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories, thoughts, and questions. She told him about her childhood, her family, and her early dreams. He listened, never interrupting, always offering gentle insight when needed. He spoke of his people, of responsibilities, and of the balance between duty and desire. In these moments, she felt the depth of their bond grow. She no longer saw him only as a teacher or guide. She saw him as a partner, someone who shared his world with her and allowed her to share hers in return. Her understanding of the village grew as well. She learned the importance of each member, the role everyone played, and the unspoken respect that held the community together. She saw how decisions were made collectively, how elders guided with wisdom, and how even small acts of kindness mattered. She joined in communal activities, from preparing meals for celebrations to helping organize gatherings. With each action, she felt a sense of belonging deepen. She was not an outsider observing life. She was part of it, woven into its fabric by effort, care, and intention. One day, as she walked along the river collecting herbs, she paused to watch children play. Their laughter reminded her of her own childhood, of games played in her town with friends and neighbors. She realized that despite the differences in culture and environment, some joys were universal: laughter, companionship, curiosity, and love. She smiled, understanding that she had found a place where she could experience all of these things fully, without fear or hesitation. There were still challenges, of course. She sometimes felt homesick, thinking of her family and the life she had left behind. Weather could be harsh, work could be exhausting, and misunderstandings occasionally arose. Yet she faced each difficulty with patience and reflection, recalling the lessons she had learned about listening, humility, and observation. Every challenge became an opportunity for growth, a chance to prove to herself that she could belong fully to this world without losing herself in the process. Her relationship with the warrior deepened as well. She learned not just about his strength, but about his heart. She saw how he cared for the village, how he protected it not just through skill, but through guidance, wisdom, and empathy. She realized that his world was not built solely on tradition or power. It was built on connection. Understanding this helped her see the true depth of his life. She admired him not because he was strong, but because he was committed, thoughtful, and deeply aware of the world around him. Over time, she began to teach others what she had learned. She helped the younger women with household tasks, shared techniques for weaving and gardening, and even assisted children in learning songs, stories, and games. The villagers welcomed her contributions warmly, and she felt a quiet satisfaction in sharing knowledge. She realized that belonging was not about being perfect. It was about showing care, trying sincerely, and giving effort to the community. As seasons changed, so did she. She had grown taller, stronger, and more confident. Her movements were deliberate, yet graceful, reflecting months of careful observation and practice. She had learned to read the land, understand the people, and anticipate the needs of her new life. Yet beyond skills and confidence, she had gained something deeper, a sense of purpose. She understood that her life was no longer solely her own. It was intertwined with the lives of others, bound by responsibility, respect, and love. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she stood beside the river, watching the water catch the light. The warrior joined her, and they sat together in quiet reflection. She thought about her journey, from a young girl curious about a world she had only heard of, to a young woman fully immersed in it. She thought about the lessons learned, the friendships built, the challenges overcome, and the trust earned. And she felt a deep gratitude, not only for the life she had been given, but for the courage she had found within herself. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "I never imagined life could be this full, this real." He nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "It is not easy, but it is worth it. Every day you grow stronger, not just in skill, but in heart." She looked at him, understanding more than words could express. She realized that the depth of his world was not measured by battles won, traditions followed, or strength displayed. It was measured by connection, understanding, and the courage to face life fully, with honesty and respect. She had learned this lesson not in a single moment, but through countless days, actions, and choices. She thought of her family back home and realized that she could carry both worlds within her. She could honor her past while embracing her present. She could be herself while being part of something larger, something enduring. The realization brought peace and joy she had never known. Days turned into months, and she became fully part of the community. Villagers trusted her, children looked up to her, and the warriors' respect and affection deepened. She understood that belonging was built slowly, through effort, care, patience, and humility. She had come to understand the rhythm of life here, the balance between work and rest, learning and teaching, listening and acting. She had learned that love, respect, and trust were earned through consistency, sincerity, and heart. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the nervous girl who first walked into the village, unsure, curious, and afraid. She smiled, realizing that fear had been a teacher as much as courage. Fear had pushed her to pay attention, to listen, to learn. And now she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face life fully, with openness, curiosity, and determination. She also realized that she had found something she had longed for all her life, not just adventure, but purpose, connection, and understanding. She had discovered that true belonging was not given. It was built. It was not about being noticed, but about noticing. Not about impressing, but about understanding. And in that understanding, she had found peace. The warrior stood beside her, his gaze on the horizon. She turned to him, seeing not only his strength, but his heart, his wisdom, and his commitment. And she knew without doubt that she had chosen rightly. She had stepped into his world, not as a visitor, but as a partner, a learner, and a member of the community. She had embraced the lessons, the responsibilities, and the joys of this life. And in doing so, she had discovered the full depth of his world and of herself. As night fell, the stars emerged, bright and steady above the village. She looked up, feeling small yet connected, aware of the vastness of life and the intimacy of the world she now called home. She felt gratitude for every lesson, every challenge, and every moment that had led her to this place. She felt love, not just for the warrior, but for life itself, for the community, and for the journey she had undertaken. She understood finally that life was not about rushing to the next moment, the next adventure, or the next thrill. Life was about presence, about care, about respect, about learning. And she had learned it fully, with courage, patience, and an open heart. And in that quiet, starlit night, she felt whole. She was no longer the girl from a small town. She was part of a living, breathing world that was challenging, beautiful, and deeply meaningful. She had arrived, not at the end of a journey, but at the beginning of a life she could live fully, with understanding, love, and purpose.